For more of this kind of content, you can subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment. The world had ended, or at least it seemed that way. It had not ended in fire and brimstone or the violent upheaval that so many had expected. No, it ended quietly, without fanfare, over the course of several years. The collapse had come in waves: political chaos, environmental disasters, then the monsters. The creatures that now ruled the planet had come from another dimension, an unforeseen result of humanity's reckless experiments with interdimensional technology. They were larger, faster, and far more vicious than anything humans had ever encountered. They had destroyed cities, wiped out entire populations, and turned the Earth into a chaotic wasteland. But in all of this, one thing had survived: her. Her name was Lira, a young alien girl from the planet Zephyria. She had been sent to Earth for a peaceful exchange program, a diplomatic mission to foster understanding between species. But when the monsters came, everything changed. Lira had been stranded, cut off from her home, her people, and every other alien race that might have helped her. She was alone on Earth, a planet she had barely begun to understand, surrounded by creatures that could easily tear her apart. Yet somehow Lira had survived. Lira was small, even by the standards of her species, which made her seem more fragile than she truly was. Her translucent blue skin shimmered faintly in the sunlight, and her silver hair flowed like liquid light. But despite her delicate appearance, she had a strength born from necessity. The monsters that roamed the desolate cities were relentless and terrifying, but they were not invincible. Lira had learned quickly to move silently through the ruins, to hide in the shadows, and to avoid the massive predators that stalked the streets. Her days were spent scavenging for food and supplies, venturing into the decaying cities where humans once thrived. The world was a ghost of what it had been. Skyscrapers that once pierced the sky now lay in ruins, their shattered windows reflecting the orange glow of fires that never seemed to die. Nature had reclaimed parts of the earth, but the monsters ruled the rest, their monstrous forms ever present in the decaying cities. It had been 2 years since the last human she had seen had perished. She hadn't expected to see another for a long time. But fate had a different plan. One day, while searching for supplies in a former metropolis, Lira heard a faint sound. It was a human voice, weak and faint, calling for help. Her heart skipped a beat. It had been so long since she'd heard a human. She had all but given up on the idea of seeing another. Cautiously, she followed the sound, moving through the crumbling streets until she found its source. A man was pinned against a crumbling wall, a massive, reptilian monster looming over him. The creature was easily 10 feet tall, with jagged scales and a mouth full of serrated teeth. It was sniffing the air, its yellow eyes scanning the area, its massive claws digging into the earth as it prepared to strike. The man was unconscious, his face covered in dirt and blood, his clothes torn. He looked to be in his mid-30s, but the years of survival had worn him down. Lira's heart raced as she observed the situation. She had faced these monsters before, and she knew that no one survived an encounter with one. She had learned to keep her distance, to let them pass by without attracting attention. But the man, he was helpless. And despite everything she had learned, despite the years of solitude and fear, something stirred inside her, a need to help, to save him. She couldn't explain why. Perhaps it was the memory of her own people's compassion, her upbringing, the way they helped each other. Or maybe, just maybe, it was because this human represented a flicker of hope in an otherwise hopeless world. Taking a deep breath, Lira moved into action. Her speed was her greatest advantage. She was fast, silent, and agile. She darted into the shadows, using the debris around her as cover, and approached the creature from behind. The monster's back was turned, and it was too focused on its prey to notice her. With a swift movement, Lira launched herself at the creature's back, her sharp, crystalline claws extending from her fingers. She dug them into the beast's scales, finding purchase as she climbed up its back. The creature howled in surprise, thrashing wildly, but Lira held on with all her strength. She found the weak point in its neck and, with a swift strike, pierced the flesh. The monster let out a final scream before collapsing to the ground, its massive body falling to the side with a heavy thud. Lira stood panting, her heart racing, but there was no time to celebrate. She rushed to the man's side, carefully rolling him over to check for signs of life. His breathing was shallow, but he was alive. The man woke up to the feeling of cold air against his face. He blinked several times, his vision blurry. He tried to sit up, but his body was too weak, and a sharp pain shot through his side. He groaned in pain and looked around. That was when he saw her. The alien girl. She was standing over him, her blue skin and silver hair almost glowing in the dim light. Her large eyes were fixed on him with an intensity that both frightened and intrigued him. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way, but there was something more in her gaze. A sense of strength, resilience, and compassion. "You're safe now," she said in a soft, melodic voice. Her accent was strange, and her words were a little broken, but they were unmistakable. Her words, despite the language barrier, carried a sense of calm and reassurance. Who are you?" the man asked, his voice weak. "What happened?" "You were attacked," Lira explained. "The monsters. I killed it. You're safe now." He tried to process the words, but the confusion clouded his mind. Monsters? Killed it? He had no memory of the fight. He glanced at the dead creature in the distance, and then back at her. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. "You saved me," he whispered, disbelief in his voice. "I did," she said simply. "You're lucky I was nearby." The man nodded slowly, trying to sit up but wincing in pain. How did you survive all this?" "Alone." Lira's eyes darkened, and she looked away, her expression becoming distant. "I've been alone for a long time. Since my people were destroyed." The man, now feeling more alert, noticed the sadness in her eyes. The alien girl had lived through unimaginable loss, and yet she still fought on. She had survived in a world full of monsters, and had now saved him, a human, from the same fate. "My name is Caden," the man said quietly, his eyes softening. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Lira replied. "Just don't die. That's all." Caden smiled weakly, still processing the enormity of the situation. He looked at her with newfound respect. She had fought to save him, to protect him when he couldn't protect himself. She had given him a second chance at life. "I won't," he said softly, his voice gaining strength. "And I owe you my life." In the days that followed, Caden and Lira made their way through the wasteland, surviving together as a team. They found shelter in an abandoned building, rationed their supplies, and learned to rely on each other. Lira taught Caden how to survive in the ruins of Earth, showing him how to avoid the monsters, how to scavenge for food, and how to make weapons from the remnants of human technology. Caden, in turn, shared what he knew about the world before the apocalypse, about humanity's struggle to survive, and the hope that still burned within the human spirit. As they journeyed together, Lira found herself beginning to care for him. He had a warmth, a humanity, that she hadn't seen in so long. She had been alone for so long that she had forgotten what it meant to have someone by your side, someone who cared, someone who would fight for you just as you fought for them. For the first time in years, Lira began to feel a flicker of hope. And as they sat together one evening, watching the last remnants of the sun disappear behind the horizon, Caden turned to Lira and spoke softly. "You know, I think we can rebuild," he said. "Together. We don't have to be alone anymore." Lira looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. She had been alone for so long, But maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to be anymore. Together, she echoed, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe that there might be a future for them after all.